Evening. Much better, thank you, Danger Mouse. I still have the odd sniffle here and there, but yeah, generally all good, thank you. Hey, hey. Am I echoey again? We had this problem last time. Hang on, let me just check the Logitech software. Everything looks like it should be where it should be. Hang on, let me restart it a sec. Good, good. I was looking at the Logitech software earlier because it was using almost 5 gig of RAM. It's like, what on earth could it have been doing to be using that much RAM? Yeah, seems alright now. It's now using 165 meg of RAM, which is much better. Hey Cloud, good to see you too. Okay, good. Well, I am going to assume that that is working then. Okay, so what have I been doing? What did we do on the last stream? Oh yeah, it was sorting out the automatic exploration, wasn't it? So that's pretty much done. There's only one thing left, and that is when it's doing its check to see whether or not the next target is within range. It's treating it as though it's a star system. So this boolean here should be false for any planet or any object within a star system, and it's finding itself true in places where it shouldn't be. But other than that, we're pretty much where we should be. So I don't know whether I showed this on the last stream. I have kind of optimized this a little bit further as well. So we're now just either checking something or producing some orders for the crew, and then ultimately finishing when we're done. I've also added some built-in debugs so we can track what the decision making is doing, which has just made it easier just to troubleshoot and work out where it's falling over. What else? Yeah, I think that's pretty much the new stuff. The rest of it's just been just optimizing and dealing with all the edge cases where the logic's been failing. So that would be the most recent one here, where that typically should be connected, but I'm forcing it as false, just to see whether or not we're picking up the right target. In fact, I was going to do a quick test of that before going on air, so we'll do that now. But there's a couple of things I want to accomplish tonight. The first one is being able to add multiple targets to the helm. So I want to be able to say to the helm person, navigate here. So just give them that and then have them navigate the ship. But then what I want to do is then be able to add multiple of those targets. So I can just keep saying go there and then go there and have it build up a queue of targets like this. So it's going to go to each target in turn. So we can have what is essentially I guess, a list of waypoints that we're giving the helm. It's sort of working right now in the sense that it is creating those individual orders, but it's not sitting in the queue properly because obviously the NPC is not doing anything with it. So we need to work out what's going on with that. Similarly, we need to be able to do our orders for exploring a star system, and then being able to say, okay, so after you've done that one, explore this one. Oops, not that one. Explore the other one next. So, come on, give me the orders. So I want to be able to queue up multiple star systems on here, and then have the NPC crew go through and explore basically as many star systems as that you give them. So they do that fully autonomously. So if we just cheat our way over. So we can see that the sensors guy is actioning that order to do the medium range scan. And then you should see them then work on each of the individual planets in turn. So selecting a target, and as soon as they're done with selecting that target, they should then create the helm task to go and fly to that address, or that coordinates. Which obviously is getting stuck in the queue now because there are other things there that were in the way. We also need to have a look at this autopilot sticking. Although I think that is actually going to action that one, so we'll see whether it does. Because what we want to see is once it arrives within the specified target distance, then a task should be created here to do a short range scan. I don't know whether you can see that because it's quite zoomed in, but it's saying to arrive within, I think that's 6 million kilometers. Okay, yeah, so it's doing that thing where we're 41 AU away, and the target that we're going to is a target within the system, so it should be using basically 1.5 times that object radius as its approach distance, and it's not. It's treating it like it's a star system. So it's stopping like 40 AU away. It's still thinking it's trying to stop on the edge of the system, which of course it shouldn't be doing. So we're not getting any orders raised for the sensors guy to do any scans because the object in question is out of range. And now it's confused because it's trying to get to within that distance of the object and it can't. Yeah, so there's a bit of cleaning up that needs doing there. So basically we are kind of on the final polish stage of this, kind of fixing all the little bugs, which is nice. So the main logic should be done. It's just a case of dealing with all these little niggles. Not as of yet, Danger Mouse, but we can certainly add that to the save system. The save system is basically just a giant struct where we store all the different values that we're generating as we go. So things like the NPC orders won't exist in that yet. So we need to make sure that we build that functionality into the save system so that it does load previous orders. Yeah, ultimately, that's the idea. So I want to be able to give the NPC crew, like you said, like a dozen star systems to go and explore, and then to go off and do something else. So you can have them just autonomously doing that whilst you're occupying yourself elsewhere. Okay, so we need to track down where this is a star system flag is being set. So when it comes to deciding whether or not we're there, that's what this is doing. So we're basically taking the location of the ship, and we're taking the details of the target, and then we're basically saying, right, are we within range? And that's just the output for the debug. So if we are within the range we're specifying, that returns true, and therefore we get rid of that task and consider it complete. But for some reason this is returning false because it doesn't think we're there. So actually, on that note, let's make sure we capture that as well. Oh, I have no doubt, Anasi, yes. Once you guys get hold of this, I'm sure there are going to be many, many more bugs. But I need to get it working. I need to get to the point where, as far as I'm concerned from my side, it's relatively smooth and bug-free, and then I can hand it over to you guys, and then you can really destroy it and find all the things I've missed. Actually, I'll keep that debug for a sec. Because the slightly irritating thing with this is that to test it, we have to obviously initiate the orders every single time. That looks unlikely. I'm very sure, yeah. Okay, something new and weird was happening there. Okay, so we've gone ahead and targeted that icy body there, or rather the NPC has targeted that icy body, because that's the closest thing to the ship right now. So that's good, it's doing that nicely. Now it's saying it's 72 AU away, which I'm doubtful of. 50 AU, so our target distance is wrong. Okay, so when I hit use sensor target, you can see it's trying to target that thing that I've got selected, but those orders are still there. So it's overriding my selection because it's still trying to go to this destination here. So if I do that, it will re-engage the autopilot. And that was part of the issue, is that when we use the ship teleport, it turns off the autopilot and then the NPC immediately turns it back on again. And that quick flip that it does seems to be stalling the autopilot. So we need to figure out why that's doing that. But this should disappear once we're within 40 odd AU. Yeah, okay, then it's created the next target. So that one should be, yeah, that new target should be the actual icy body, and it's not. It's still coming up as the center of the system, although it is now saying star system false. Yeah, and it's still trying to stop too far away. Okay. So basically, it's not setting the right target in the right place. So when we do our search for our next target, if we've been through our exploration data and we're comparing that against the objects in the system, and if we find one which is less than knowledge level 3, then we consider that a valid target to go and explore. So as soon as that returns true, then we are adding that nav target to our shipwide order. Yeah, so we're checking that there. And we're getting the same target there. So that is the one we're checking against. And we've already validated that it is less than knowledge level 3 and it's in the data. So we're validating that, we're confirming that there. So this should be updating this. Unless this set members isn't working, which is not impossible. I'm wondering whether this is being reset. Although it shouldn't be. The reason I'm using a struct illusion is because it's the easiest way of collating all of the data across the game. So a lot of our state files from various systems are in the form of a struct. So simply by adding that struct verbatim to the save struct means we're getting an exact copy of the state file of any particular system, like the census data. So we can write that census state file straight to the save struct. So yeah, so that's basically what the save game consists of. It is a single struct with a lot of substructs for all the data in it. Okay, so that is happening. What we're doing is we're specifying, or rather we're resetting a reference to our active shipwide orders every time this runs. So once per second this whole logic flow is running, and we are replacing anything we do in that struct. So when we do set members on this, 1 second later we've completely undone that work by grabbing our orders out of our list of shipwide orders. And the reason we have to do this is because this is all of the shipwide orders that currently exist, and if the captain wants to change the priority of those orders, then we will reorder this array with the highest priority, or whatever the active order is, as the first item in the array, which is why we're grabbing index 0. And that then becomes our active orders. So everything we do from this point is based on that. So in order to make sure that this is updated, we actually need to update the entry in this array instead of there. So I need to make sure that we can identify which one that is. Because if if the priority of the array is changed after this has run, then we'll be updating the wrong one, which could be awkward. So we've got like a 1 second window, and granted it's unlikely that that will happen within that 1 second window, but it's a non-zero chance. So we just need to make sure that we validate what we're doing. Or we store it separately, but yeah, but when we do that, I don't want to rely on what the current sensor target might happen to be at the time, because again, that's something which is transitory, and that current sensor target could easily change if the guy on the sensors presses the button and targets something different. So we want to make sure that the target of interest, i.e. this, is set when it's relevant and then stored separately from the button on the UI, which could be pressed by anyone at any time. Which means we do need to set the reference inside that. Yeah, so this is running 10 times per second, and this is where we're checking our completion states. So we're basically, on this particular instance, we're checking to see whether or not the thing that we've set as our nav target is indeed a valid target with respect to the current orders. And then if it is, then we say, right, let's go there next. So rather than setting members there, we have to do it here. So we'd have to get a reference to index 0. And for now, we're just going to have to assume that it's still index 0. Again, we're working with a 1 second window, so it's fairly tight. But if we run into issues, then we're going to have to loop the array and actually check that we've got matching criteria. But well, we can do matching order ID, I suppose. Because we could check against this. So yeah, it's probably the easiest way of doing this. So if we get our active orders, so just as validation, if they are equal, then we know we're at least dealing with the right entry in the array, and it hasn't been reordered at any point. And then we can set our target. So yeah, so if we do set members on that, so validate that, set members on that, and then we set our target. Which is that. Okay, so that should hopefully set that. Okay, and now when this runs, when this runs, we should now be taking the correct information from this array when we add it to this variable here. So So let's just give that a quick whirl a minute. And actually also while we're at it, I want to change the behavior of our ship teleport so that we don't turn off the FTL drive. So all we're doing is we are changing the coordinates of the ship. So we are making sure it doesn't go to Sag A, because obviously if the values are zeroed out and this runs, then you end up at Sag A, which is a huge overhead on the Galaxy Gen just appearing there. So we avoid that. So we set our coordinates there, we move our ship to the local coordinates, and then we do nothing else, so that the ship will remain in whatever state it's in. So if it's currently on maximum FTL, it will still be at maximum FTL, just somewhere else. That will stop the autopilot getting confused for a minute. Okay. So our speed and everything, so our field power, our autopilot and our speed there should not change when I do a ship TP. Now that did, because we're in the system, so the autopilot is properly reacting to that, but we didn't slow down at all. It was just the autopilot saying, hang on a minute, we're within range, so I need to throttle down a bit. But we're still on our way to our entry point, which is good. That's doing the right thing. Okay, so we select our target, which we've got, and it properly cleared that off. Okay, and we're then saying to navigate there instead. Yeah, so it's still getting itself confused. So that check is saying we're within range of it, which we're clearly not. That one's saying we're 37 AU away. And the active target is correctly selected. So that... Oh, okay, so that worked. And that's the same there. Okay, so that should be taking us to that icy body. So when we get within range of that, we should see a short range scan order appear on there, at which point the NPC should switch to the short range mode and do the scan. Like so. Okay, well that was good. So then they select a new target on the medium range. Okay. So the sensors have selected that Earth analog there as the closest object. And then the helm. The helm's picked up probably the central star again. So if I click that. Okay, so it's not selecting the target. So I think the target itself is correct. Yeah, it's picked up the right object there. And then, yeah, then the autopilot was stuck. Okay. Oh, that's a pretty view. Quick, run to the back door. Okay, so that should once again recognize that we're in range and do the short range scan. Yep, okay. I saw that happen then. Then the helm targeted the central star. Right, so why is that happening? It's so very close to working. Just a few tiny little niggles. So we know that's working, and this appears to be working. Let's get rid of all this junk a minute. Okay. Yes, I did, Anasi. This is taking longer than I hoped it would. It doesn't help that I have done and redone this several times now over the past few weeks because, as I've mentioned previously, this whole system for managing tasks, not just on the bridge, but shipwide, is probably one of the biggest systems in the whole game, because everything that you and the crew are doing aboard the ship is ultimately dependent on this same core code. So this is like one of the major pillars for holding up everything in terms of shipwide activity. So it needs to be right. It needs to be slick and as efficient as possible. So, you know, as I've been building different aspects of it, and I'm running into some issues, and I'm thinking, okay, that's not optimized or as efficient as it could be. I'm stripping that out and redoing it in a more efficient way to make sure that it is as efficient as it possibly could be, because this is going to be a major system for the game. Which, yes, has been more time consuming than I hoped it would be. I will have a look and see whether that still happens when there's no shipwide order. I mean, ultimately, I'm building it in such a way where all of these are standalone tasks that are being pulled together for something like a shipwide order. So, like the order that's generated there and the one that's generated here, you're going to different coordinates for different reasons, but ultimately these two things are all handled in the same way by the helm. So if we just grab that. Oh, of course, yeah, I moved it to here. I needed some delays, so I had to move it out of a function and into the event graph. Yes, so for each bridge station, and once we move this to the NPCs themselves, they'll be running the same code. So basically, they're checking to see if there are any tasks in the system relevant to them, and ultimately, if there is, then this is where we break out and decide, which one of those tasks that they're running. So this navigate to location, this is the same every single time. So this is like a skill that we're teaching to that NPC. So as long as we call that skill and give it the right information, then they should be able to handle this ability every single time, depending on what we give them. So this list is going to grow, and these are all the different skills that this NPC will have. So every NPC on the ship, depending on which department they're in and what their job role is, they will have a list of skills that we can call upon to address orders or tasks aboard the ship. So this is about defining those skills, building those skills, and making sure that they are as generic as possible, that we can call them repeatedly as and when needed. So to answer the question, it shouldn't matter who is calling it or when. That skill should be the same every single time and have the same outcome. In theory, that's the idea anyway. I think what we need to specifically check here is making sure that the helm's getting the right thing. So this is where we invoke that skill, and I've added a flag here for immediacy. So if we flag it as immediate, it goes to the front of the queue, and that then becomes the active thing they're working on. Because as we check here once per second, and we look to see if there are any helm tasks, then that's the task we're actioning. So ultimately, we're pulling an array. So that array comes from our task manager, and that holds all of the current helm orders. So we could have hundreds and hundreds of queued up things that we want the helm to do. But if we raise something with this flagged as immediate, it inserts that at the very beginning of the array. So 1 second later, they pick that up as their active task. No, Delta, it actually works basically, what's the best way of describing it? So it depends on what the overall objective is. So when you speak to an NPC and you ask them to do something, that's now generating a task in the back end, in the task manager. So that will generate the order that comes up on the UI. So that can also be there for players as well. So if you look at the chair when there's a player sat in it and you issue the same order, then they get that come up on their screen as a player, just the same as an NPC would. And you could do as many things as you wanted on as many bridge stations as you wanted, because the task manager is tracking all that in the background. And each bridge station has its own separate array of tasks that it references. Now, when it comes to the ship-wide orders, you have the overall ship-wide objective, which could be, in this instance, fully explore this star system. So you've got a helm task raised for getting the ship into that system. Now, as soon as you pass within the boundary of that system, then a task gets raised for the sensors to go ahead and start doing a medium range scan. So there's a sensors task running at the same time as there's a helm task running, because the helm hasn't actually got to the arrival point yet. So those two tasks are running in parallel. Now, depending on who finishes first, the system will either wait or move on accordingly. So if the medium range scan completes before the helm has actually arrived at the arrival point, then they will have targeted something new, as in the next planet that needs a short range scan, and they would have then raised an immediate task for the helm to go there. So at that point, the helm should abandon what it's doing and then steer the ship towards the individual planet that needs scanning. So the whole system should be constantly adapting to the current situation and what needs to happen right there and then. Now, at the same time, you could, as the captain, order the helm to go and do something else. And if you raise that as an immediate action, they will go and do that instead. And then once they've done that, they'll go then back to the thing that's still in the queue, which is the thing that the sensors needed. So again, the whole thing should be adaptive. It's just it's pretty much there. We just need to get all the little niggles dealt with. Now, none of this is in dev builds yet. If you raise something as immediate, then all that's doing is it's putting it ahead of the queue. So that action basically defines where in the queue does it go. Either it's going at the front of the queue or it's being appended to the end of the queue. And we need to make sure we add that as part of the radial menu. So on here, when you go to explore target system, right now that will just raise that as a command. But we need, so where you click it and you get a new menu, we need one more menu come up with two options, which is basically now or next. So basically you're deciding, do you want the crew to do that now, immediately, or do you want them to just append it to the list of things that they're doing? So we need that control from the menu's perspective, so that you have control over when the NPCs are actually actioning things. So by having the ability to say, do this next, that's basically automatically implementing the ability to have like a chain of actions that you can queue up. They are, versus they are, nibbling away continuously. But as you can see, it is a complex system with a lot of moving parts and a lot of interdependency across the board. So you've got multiple queues that are also generating queues of tasks, and they all have to work together and they all have to balance out, and there's going to be a lot of like conflict resolution between the two queues and things being raised. like this should be able to be plugged straight into there without having to specifically untick that, because when we raise that, that should already be taken care of. But we need to make sure, and this is probably more on the helm side. Where are we? Right, so yeah, so this is the NPC skill. So this is the internal logic that the NPC goes through in order to have that ability. So we just need to make sure that the logic that they're running is what it should be. So immediately I can see that we do have a slight problem here in that we're not actually checking to see whether or not we are within a system. So if we are in a star system, then we're going to treat that separately. And I think we were doing 8,000 and something. Was it? Yeah. That. So the first thing the NPC is asking is obviously, are we there yet? And to work that out, first of all, it checks to see whether we are in the correct galactic coordinates. And then we check the distance to the object within those coordinates. And those two things have to both return true. If they do, then we're all good. We do nothing. Basically, we just wait at that point. We don't let the NPC have control over closing the task. So while the NPC can be satisfied itself that we have arrived where we need to be, it doesn't have the ability to actually close off the task. The task manager retains authority over that. So it's running the same check basically. So it'll close it on behalf of the NPC or the player. So the next check we do, and let's just replace this with some of our recently created macros. Just removes some of the node bloat. Yeah, so we're just checking to see that our current active nav target is the same object as the task that was raised. If it is, so if it's not, right, I think this is where it's failing actually. So we are telling it to specifically use the command target. Now the command target has already been preset as our as the star system in this instance. So we don't want it to be grabbing that command target again. We want it to be using essentially this target here. So we probably need a separate payload for that. because we always want to be using the target which is stored in the task or the order that comes through, because obviously we've got the button there for that, but we don't have direct access to the UI from here to be able to do that. Again, when the NPCs are performing actions at a bridge station, we want them to be pressing the buttons on the UI as if they were players. So rather than having the NPCs kind of cheat and have a backdoor into performing those actions, we want to emulate button presses. So we want to capture these messages on the actual UI widget and trigger those buttons on the widget in the same way that a player would trigger if they press the button physically. So the NPCs and the players they're inputting their commands through the system using the same path, just to make sure that the logic remains consistent, whether it's a player or an NPC sat in the chair. But this does mean that this has to change, because whilst this is working initially to get to the star system, once we're there and we're changing targets from the sensors, this is no longer relevant, because we're kind of like forcing it to press a single button when it should be getting those coordinates from the task. And we obviously provided a button on the orders pop-up for that. So we need to make sure that that's what the NPC's pressing. And I'm thinking we probably need to make a new payload that can trigger the pressing of the button, or at least stand in as a proxy for pressing the button. So where we have this here, so this is our broadcast channel, and we've got our responses here to that. I think if we duplicate that, so we can broadcast on the same channel, because if we have a different payload, then it's handled separately, which is nice. So we can reuse that same channel for different purposes, and then we can actually take our helm target struct as our payload. So if we grab our helm target, and then we can, then we can extract that data from this broadcast now, which gives us everything we need in order to press the button. So where we would normally, where are we here? So where we would normally press our command target, which sends button ID 23. And again, this is necessary because it goes through player controller to be replicated. We need to send through 24, in which case we need to set these. So yeah, so if we use set orders target, then we can do that from there. So right now, this won't be working in multiplayer. And the reason this is not working in multiplayer is because we're not going via our parent blueprint, which ultimately sends it through to the player controller, which comes back here replicated. We're skipping that whole process, and we're just setting the target, which is ultimately setting everything up on the helm. So we'll get that working first, just as a test to make sure it does work. and then we'll worry about replication afterwards. But that should be sufficient. So from here, rather than sending that, if we instead use this struct instead, then we can grab that from here. In fact, even easier, we can plug that straight in. So now what we're doing is we are doing the equivalent of pressing this button, basically. So when you click that button there, what it's doing in reality is it's firing this here. So let's just give that a quick test. So I just wait for them to do the scan. Okay, so that should be replaced with finding a target. It's selected that gas giant. So it's now raised the helm task, which this time has correctly taken us to there. So you can see that the helm basically abandoned what it was doing, and it's taken us to that gas giant instead. At which point the sensors should then perform their scan once we're in range. Okay. And as soon as that scan's complete, they should target another planet, and then the helm should, yeah, there we go, take us there instead, leaving that one behind. So what's happening is, as soon as that short range scan is complete, it's then going through the exploration data and picking the first planet, the closest planet, that doesn't have knowledge level 3 yet. So there we go, it's doing its scan. And again, see, the helm task is still running. So now we've selected the new target, sent that to the helm, and now the helm has abandoned what it was doing, and it's now going to go to this other target instead. So we're doing drive-by scans of each planet without actually even stopping, which is a nice efficient way of getting the whole system done. Yes, Dave, definitely. So once, and this will extend once collecting samples are, part of the equation for 100% scanning a system. Right now, short range scans across the board are all that's needed. But once we have sample retrieval and analysis, that's going to have to factor into it as well. So yes, it will have to be a case of stop the ship, create some tasks for sending some probes down, and then collect those samples before moving on to the next planet. Yeah, something broke. Okay, so arriving at the central star seems to have broke the process. So that is what we had targeted, and we have not initiated a scan. Because we're more than 1,000,000 kilometers away. So I set the cutoff at 1,000,000 kilometers, and obviously with a star, we're further away than that. So that'll be why. Yeah, that'll be why that's not working. So I imagine what's happening is... Actually, no, that would be exactly what's happening. So the logic is saying we're not close enough yet. We're not within range. But the helm task is to be 1.5 times the radius away. So the helm task is coming back complete because we are there. We are within that radius. But that's a different radius or different distance to the distance that the short range scan requires. So I think what we'll do is probably make that the same check. Where are we? Task manager. Good question, Delta. And I think probably yes, that's not a bad shout. Because obviously doing surface activity on a world is definitely a measure above just scanning it from orbit. So we'd have to think about what sorts of things can we present in terms of data that are only obtainable from doing surface work. So obviously there's going to be a certain amount of stuff you can determine from orbit, but what more can you determine from a surface sample? I suppose that's the question there. So if we can build up a catalogue of information that we can present as data that requires that surface activity, then yes, we can call that knowledge level 4 and treat it accordingly. We just need to work out what those things would be. Right, okay, so if we grab our radius, and then we can multiply that by 1.5, and then we can do kilometers to centimeters, and plug that in there. Okay, so that should fix the issue we're having with stars. Although, so the helm checking distance is 1.6 times the radius, so I think I'll make that the same for this, so that we are making sure that the ship isn't stopping too far away outside of that range. Oh, for sure. Yeah, things like orbital scans, we'll probably go through a more lore-rich way of doing it, rather than just having a a 0 to 100% progress bar. We'll probably have things like scanning atmospheric chemicals, scanning water composition, and just go down a list of things that it's actually checking from orbit. And obviously we can work out which of those things require surface details. Like you can analyze the ocean chemicals from orbit by spectroscopy or whatever else you're using for that, but that doesn't replace an actual physical sample of that water, because there's only so much you can see from an orbital perspective. So yeah, that's a good candidate for a level 4 knowledge, actually performing like samples of the water. Right, let's just see whether or not this will successfully handle the star. Yeah, definitely, Firstus. So, when it comes to things like using gas giants for refueling, there needs to be like a percentage of chemicals, or like a parts per million for the different things that you're harvesting. So, if we're listing parts per million on a per planet basis, and that's the kind of thing you can glean from a scan, then you can use that to identify like which of several gas giants is the most efficient one to refuel from, because it has the highest parts per million in its atmosphere of the thing that you're harvesting. And I guess we need the same kind of thing for asteroids, surface environments, and that sort of thing as well. Did our autopilot stall us out? I think it did. Yeah, it did. Okay, so that's definitely the next thing we need to fix, is work out why the autopilot is sticking. Yeah, to be honest, that's not a bad bit of like drama for the game. If running a high resolution scan via a high powered laser looks like an attack, it could be treated as such by particularly xenophobic species. And then obviously the diplomacy challenge is then explaining, no, we're not attacking you, we're scanning you. That could lead to some gameplay. Yeah, so same again. The helm has correctly targeted the right place, but the autopilot stalled. So if I just turn it off, then the NPC turns it back on. Okay, so we should target the star after this one, because the star is the closest thing to us. course, now we've changed our criteria for running the short-range scan. It's waiting until we arrive, practically, before initiating the scan, which means that the ship is disengaging from the FTL. So you can see there, yeah, you can see the helm targeting the star. And of course, you need to just nudge the autopilot. We can tweak that slightly, so maybe it starts doing its scan maybe twice the planet's radius, and then it can complete before we fully disengage the FTL, just to enable those drive-by scans. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so using the radius is definitely preferable from the sensor's perspective. And because we didn't disengage the FTL that time, it automatically carried on with its journey. Okay, so radius problem fixed. The next problem to fix is the autopilot. And we should be able to test that without having to fly too far. Okay. So this bit of code here is very, very old. Probably like to the birth of the project almost. So it's not great in terms of optimization. Okay, so we are, and this might be something to do with it, we're pausing our timer for the autopilots. Yeah, throttling down, disengaging the FTL. Okay. So when we hit the autopilot off button, basically we are just triggering those events there, and then the autopilot is turned back on immediately afterwards by the NPC, at which point it works. And notice that we're not specifically setting this. We set it there, there, and there. And we're reading it there, setting it from there, and there. So, okay. That shouldn't need anything to do with the autopilot, so we can ignore that. Don't need any of that anymore. shouldn't make a difference, but I'm going to pop in that variable there. I don't think we're making any particular decisions based on that, but yeah, let's double check that again. So where do we use it? So we use it there. And we use it there. Right, I think I know what's happening. So whether or not the autopilot is on is used as one of our decision-making things here. So we're actually, if we get our macro instead of stringing that out. So this is named wrong. This is actually the autopilot. I need to rename it at a point where I can do so without saving everything. So of course we're checking that variable. And if it's false, then we are trying to engage the autopilot, which is already engaged, which doesn't help. Again, let's just place that. Right, and then that should be processed on here somewhere. Not that one. That's probably going through game state. Okay. Right, let's just see whether that fixed it anyway. Okay, so right. So there is something we need to change there. So I was handling navigate to command target and navigate to sensor target as separate skills rather than just navigate to location. And we don't want that to be the case. We want navigate to location to be the only thing that they can do. Just to keep that as unified and simple as possible. So yeah, so handle helm. Yeah, so this nav to command target and nav to sensor target. Both of these need to be navigate to location. And navigate the ship to the specified coordinates. And obviously that's going to be the coordinates that are on the button. And again, we don't want we don't want to use the command target specifically, because if we have a queue of orders that the NPC is working their way through, all the player, then by the time they get to this one, the command target might have changed. So by saying navigate to the command target, you're actually navigating to the wrong place, because that's not where you were supposed to go at the point the order was raised. So which is why we moved to the idea of storing that on the order itself. And in fact, I think we'll take the sensor target one and do the same thing with it. And although actually no, we won't, because yeah, we want to capture that from the sensors. But we'll put the same thing in terms of our description. So the skill we're invoking is the same on both, and the text is the same. It's just that when we populate the targets that we're saving, obviously that target's coming from two different places. Right, let's give that a quick whirl. So if we get them to go there, they've set that as their target, and then off we go. Now if I mess with them, they should be able to recover. So obviously we are 96 AU away, we're starting to go. Right, if I now troll them by turning that off, we should so we are stuck disengaging, but are we going anywhere? Are we getting any closer? And we do seem to be. The reason I've got no target on the window, by the way, is because the electrical cables are named something different on the test map. I need to go through and name them the same thing so that we get our proper electrical connection working. Okay, so there is the target. And the question is it actually going to disengage? Yes, it is. Okay. Let's go somewhere else. So if we go there, okay. So turning the autopilot off, they turn it back on again. And then we can mess with the buttons. Okay. We're still making our way. Right, so if we say go there next, we should have two targets in the system. So once we've arrived at the first one, we should move on to the second. so did it re-engage? Yes. Okay, so that looks like it's fixed the autopilot logic. Okay, so we should then go over here. If we do that, and then go there, then do that, go there, then do that, go there. So we now have a whole list of places that we've told them to go. So they should now autonomously go between all those different targets, all efficient like. Exactly, CSI, yeah. So basically that's the kind of thing that we're wanting to build into it, so that you can queue up actions. You can queue up something like this where you're queuing up like a breadcrumb trail for the ship to follow, or like a patrol route or something like that. And again, our success check is further than our arrival check, so it should clear off the task from the list well ahead of us actually disengaging, which means we should veer off successfully without actually stopping. And we can potentially make that twice the radius rather than 1.6. I'm thinking 1.6 is probably a little bit too close. But it's doing what it's supposed to do, that's the main thing. And so we now only got two locations left in the list. Yeah, I'm going to do a command tutorial that covers all of this separately from like the nav tutorial. Although something we can do is potentially have the nav tutorial use the new command system instead of just having Ava say press this button. We can actually have it come up as an objective, which could be quite cool. Gotta love Saturn, always impressive. Okay, and then we're arriving at our final location. And then once we get there, the NPC should stop and do nothing else. Okay, so that's the helm task done, and that's it. We have arrived, and they'll now just sit there waiting for new orders. So I guess the next question is whether or not the sensors guy can handle needing to scan multiple targets. I suppose that's where we need the task manager to take over a little bit. So if we select a target from the list like that, although I suppose we need to do it from here, don't we? So select it as a command target. Now we want that NPC to do a short range scan. So short range, perform a scan, which they were able to do. Was that the one we were at? Oh, that didn't help, did it? Bad example. Let's pick one we're not at. Oh no, I did pick that one. Oh, okay, yeah, so that's not working. So say that one there. Obviously won't flag. So at some point we need to make sure that we have like a yellow bar or something on these to indicate that it's currently selected as a command target. So if I click that, then whoever's sat here needs to be able to see that's the thing I've currently selected. So if I click that and say scan this, then as a player you should be able to see exactly which one I've got highlighted. We do have a button that you can press, so that has targeted that one, but it would be better if it was indicated in some way. But yeah, so if we then told them to perform a scan of that, they are scanning the thing that we're next to, not the thing that I had highlighted. So there's some logic which needs to take place there. Now the issue is obviously the thing that I've got selected isn't the thing we're next to, so it's out of range for a short range scan. So when I ask them to do the scan, there needs to be some communication with helm to get the ship there. So they need to be able to send that to the helm and then ask the helm, to get on and get the ship there. Or rather than asking them specifically to do it, maybe we do it via the shipwide orders. So we pick up contextually what we have highlighted. So right now, obviously, we have an object within a system highlighted. So explore target system is not really a valid choice for what we've got highlighted here. So we need to have something along the lines of scan this object rather than explore target system. Explore current location is still valid because that's the system we're currently in. But yeah, so we need to work on that contextual awareness to make sure that you've always got the relevant thing here, because once that exists as an order in the system, then the orders manager can then bounce tasks between the two stations to make sure that objective is met. Whereas just asking that guy, I guess he doesn't necessarily have authority to ask the helm to go somewhere. That has to come from the captain. So I guess if you ask them to scan something out of range, the correct response from the NPC is like that they're unable to because the object's out of range, and then that has been put back on the captain to make sure the ship is in range so that they can do the thing requested of them. We don't want the sensors guy suddenly issuing commands to the helm. Yeah, Sol would be 100% scanned. It's just for some reason on the test map it's not loading the data. it's something to do with the fact that I'm just got it running in a test environment. It's not reading the database properly. I will figure it out, but it's low on the priority list at the moment. What we can do, however, is we can very quickly and easily add the logic for why is that going there? Orders. Oh, of course, because of the alert conditions. Ignore me, I'm going mad. Yeah, so explore current location. Right now isn't being raised. It's not being properly set up as a task. But we can copy paste practically everything from exploring a target system, because all we're doing is checking to see whether or not we're there. In fact, we can probably even use the same thing. So let's just make sure that the orders are arriving properly. In fact, let's go all the way back to there. Okay, so explore current location is using shipwide explore current. I'm just going to take a copy of that so that we've got a reference to it. Okay, then when that fires, it fires this, which takes us through to the controller where we do our command orders, which comes through to there. So handle shipwide orders, and explore current is not connected to anything, but we can actually probably just do the same thing because we are we're checking against the galactic coordinates. Let's just give that a try a minute. Because basically, when it does the logic, it should. I mean, the first thing it checks is, are we in the target system? So, oh, let's make sure we hook that up as well. So, so explore system. Yeah, we're giving it the same orders. So the first thing we check is, are we in the right place? So that's automatically just going to pass straight on to whether or not a scan's needed. So let's give that a whirl. Okay, so here's our current system. I'm going to do it from there, because right now we don't have anything targeted. So actually, yeah, so we do need to make a change, because at the point of issuing the order here, obviously we're creating the shipwide order and we are grabbing our current command target in order to do that, but we can't do that because we don't have a command target and we don't want to have to select anything. We just want the NPCs to explore whatever system you're in. So let's just mix that up a little bit. So rather than that, instead we want to, do we have even reference to that? Yeah, we should do. So get No, I don't think we do. I'm going to just cheat a minute. Oh, actually, no, I can't do that because that's not where it lives. If we get our game state. We can grab that. So get sector. Just need to check where that's being stored. I want to try and get to that data as optimally as possible without having to grab a copy of it and store a copy of that data on the player controller, because that's basically everything within that star system, which we could, because it is broadcast out every time it's created, but ideally we need that held on game state. Where are we? Game state. There it is. So we've got a blueprint component on here, which I need to remove from game state, to be honest, because when I first set this up, I thought, oh, that's fine. We'll just stick it on game state as a component, and that can generate all our data for us. But I've moved more towards creating an actual actor in the world. Like the Galaxy Gen box and all these boxes that do jobs. It's much better to have them in the world as something we can reference and pull data from, rather than kind of storing all that on game state. But it is there for now until I move it. So what we do here is when the ship enters a new location in the galaxy, one of the 1 light year cubes as opposed to the 100 light year cubes, obviously the ship's coordinates update. So what it does is it takes the ship's galaxy coordinates and compares that to our sector location. So this is basically all of the 1 light year cubes that contain star systems in a 50 light year radius. So sometimes this is like 8,000 entries long, so it's quite big. And then what we do is we take our galaxy coordinates and then we loop through that looking for a match, in which case we break that loop, and that is our current system. Now what I want to do is replace this with a map instead, and then we can use our galaxy coordinates as the key, and then have our array, or rather the data that's contained within this array for each sector location, as the value on that map. So rather than having to loop through what could be 8,000 rows of data before we find the one we want, we're doing a direct key lookup using our vector coordinates as our key, and then we can just grab exactly what we need immediately without having to search for it. Obviously that's kind of like version 2 of the Galaxy system, just to optimize how that works. But for now, that grabs our matching location, and then we send that out as a global event. So that goes out as a payload, and then whatever in-game system cares about the current system details we'll grab that. So that is held as our sector location. And obviously we then generate the details. So we can either handle a custom system like SAJ, or just generate a procedural one. So that does that, and then that broadcasts that out. Now we're not actually storing that on here, we're just broadcasting it. So I'm thinking it's probably worth just actually storing that on here as well, if we're not already. I don't think we are, no. Yeah, so if we just grab a copy of this and then feed that into our global event. Again, at some point this is being replaced with our gameplay message subsystem version instead. But now that we've saved a copy of that, that means all we have to do to access this is, where are we? I forgot which system we were trying to pull it from here. So we can now just get our sector location details, and there's everything we need to know about the current sector. So when it comes to generating our target, we can get rid of that and grab this directly. And this contains literally everything about this system. So that is details about, or the high level details about the system, and then each planet has its own separate entry with all the nitty gritties. So we have to take our galactic coordinates for the system address. We're going to keep the local coordinates zeroed out. We're not going to bother with classing it as a star system. We can pop that in there just as part of our orders. We'll just use the star radius for now. None of this ultimately matters for this one because we are, in fact, I might as well do that. We are not going to use any of this. This is literally just to check that we're in the right system. So so none of those other details really matter. Although we will take the name. Just use that one. Right, so that gives us everything we need to create that set of orders with location details that are coming directly from the current location we're at, rather than a specifically selected target. Okay, so now with absolutely nothing selected, if we issue the orders, explore current location, hopefully it should kick off and do something. So nothing there. It said it created it, but obviously didn't. Okay, so what's it doing? So we're giving it explore current. Okay, we're issuing that from here. So that's what we're sending through. Explore current. We're sending it on the channel bridge commands shipwide. So here, just need to double check. So bridge commands shipwide, and then we're sending through shipwide explore current. Let's just make sure that we are typing that correctly, just in case. Okay, so we're definitely getting this far. So we're creating our shipwide order. We will actually make it active immediately for both of those. Actually, no, we won't. Because until I've added the ability to queue things up, if I don't make it active immediately, then it will just add it to the queue. Right, so we're generating our order ID. Doing explore system, which is the same as that. Pending, the same as that. So all of that's the same. Okay. And then on here, so we are creating that, so creating our shipwide order. So either by putting it at the beginning or by appending it to the list, and then we are creating that debug message, which we were seeing that being created. So it's getting that far. So once that's in the system, that's when we start looping through our shipwide orders. We make it active, and it should be this one, explore system. That is what we're creating, explore system. Oops, just closed the thing I wanted. Back. Yep, so explore system. So I guess the first thing we're checking is that we have matching exploration data. Now what is probably happening here is that we do have matching data for Earth, for the Sol system. In fact, we should do, because it's always fully explored, which means medium scan required is going to be no, and then any short range scans required is going to be no, in which case it's just going to clear the task. So let's just see whether or not that appears and immediately disappears, in which case it's actually working as intended. So we just keep an eye on that. So orders, shipwide orders, explore current. Yeah, and it immediately disappears. So so it's saying this is already an explored system, which we know it is, so that's fine. So if we do one, like, I know that one will do. And then we tell the ship to go there. And then we will cheat. Okay, so just make sure that that task goes away. Okay, so task is gone. Let's leave that up a sec. And nothing happening there either. Okay, so none of these have been explored. So if we just go to galactic positioning mode, if I now issue those orders to explore the current location, things should now kick into action. There we go. Okay, so we are doing our medium range survey first. That will give us our object names. And then we'll go through and do each object in turn. So we've got a helm task to go to the next object. And then when we arrive, we shall have a sensors task to do the scan. There we go, doing our scan. Hey Hubris, good to see you. Okay, good, and then that's successfully raising a task for the next location, in which case the process repeats. So yeah, so that should now carry on and complete the same way that it would if you were telling it to explore any system. Because the logic's the same, it's literally running the same skill. So that shouldn't have any issue working that out. I've run out of tea, that's no good. No, it doesn't need to stop. It can just do it on the fly. In fact, usually when entering a system, the medium range scan will have completed long before the ship tries to stop, in which case it will just go on to explore the next object. Like if I start the scan on these, see it's already started scanning before the ship stopped, but I can increase the radius on that and have it start scanning sooner. Right, so that's all good then. Yeah, let's just have a quick look at the menu and see what we've got, what's working and what isn't. Okay, so I think our alert conditions were working. Yep. So that's fine. And we know that those are working now. Let's see if that works. So if we, let's go for, oh, actually, that shouldn't do anything if we click it, but it is. Where is it sending us? Is the question. Oh, it's sending us to Saj. That's no good. Right, so we need to make sure that we flag whether or not we have a target. I think I added that to the struct. So we find our hollow display. That one. Okay, yeah, so on our command target, we've actually got a has target, which is ticked when we target something, but that's false by default. So we need to make sure that when we build this, oh, we are doing it there already. Okay, yeah, so I did start doing that. So we've got our include flag there, and what should be happening is when we build the menu, it should be deciding on an object by object basis whether or not to include that object on the list. Obviously that's being ignored, so let's make sure that we fix that. So when we build the menu, there we go. So yeah, so we should be skipping this if include is false. So if include is true, then go ahead and build the menu. Okay, and that should be the same on all of them. So we only want it to actually build the menu if we are specifically telling it to. So we can then use that flag as part of our context sensitivity to make sure that if the option that you want is not valid, then it can be skipped. Let's just give that a quick test. These are all the little bits and pieces that we need to tie up, all these little loose ends to make sure that the system is as foolproof as possible. So yeah, so orders obviously is missing. Probably because I didn't click include. no, not that one. Shipwide orders. Include. There we go. This is going to be one of those gotchas where I forget to add things. Oh, of course, yes, and also we're gating it behind different roles. Now, I won't do that yet. Obviously, once your role aboard the ship is more cemented, then being able to issue orders on the bridge first will be gated by your actual role, but more importantly, we need a flag to say whether or not you currently have the con. So if someone hands you the con and walks off, then obviously you need to then inherit the ability to issue orders. So we need to make sure that's flagged. And if you don't have the con, then this include flag needs to be disabled, so you don't have the ability to issue orders to the bridge crew. Just to make sure that is properly gated. Just checking it's there. Right, so orders is back, and then shipwide orders. So you can see that we don't have anything there, although technically we don't have anything there. I think right, yeah, so obviously we're not telling it how many options are on the radial menu when we discount one, so we need to update that. But explore target system is gone because it's no longer relevant, so we've only got on those things. And like cancel current orders needs to only be there if there are any orders, so we need to check the task manager and make sure that their orders are present in order to be able to cancel them. So that should just pop off on its own. Or not. Where are we taking? Is it going back? Are we doing another Saj A? Yeah, we are. Okay. Wonder if we can get I don't think we can actually. Although what we could do, obviously this is what we want to change, but we need to change it based on how many we actually added. So I suppose the easiest way to do that, if we have a local int, so if we assign, oops, no, not that. So we assign that 0, and then every time this is true, then we can increment it. And then we can just pop that in there instead. So once that loop is complete, we'll just grab however many we assigned. That should sort that out. That is a direct reference, so hopefully it does update that. If not, we'll just have to do an assign afterwards. Let's just grab and grab and grab. Actually, I suppose... no, that should be fine. We're going to have to do this on all of these, so get rid of that one. Pop that there. Pop that there. And the same on this one. Grab that, pop it there. Stick that on there. Move that out of the way. Get rid of that. Copy that. Pop that on there. Let's just see whether that fixes the problem. Yes, SAJ is the default for everything. It's because obviously it's at 0, 0, 0, and when you clear a value, they go to 0, 0, 0. So SAJ naturally becomes the target. I need to have that has target flag used across the board, so that we can simply use a boolean to define the lack of a target rather than setting it to all zeros, because all zeros is a valid target. So it just confuses the system. Well, that didn't go as planned, did it? Oh, it kind of went as planned. So we got the right number of segments. I think what's happening is we're adding the menu items and then changing the number of segments. So of course it's adding them in the wrong place. So we're going to have to do it slightly differently. In an annoying way. Yeah, it's more the case that the center of the object is at 0, 0, 0, and that's the center of that subsector cube. So each star system is at the 0 location of each subsector. Yeah, it won't matter because it will still try and target that. So it's still trying to target 0, 0, 0. So whichever way you do it, it's still targeting something 26,000 light years away. If we just have a simple boolean, like has target, yes or no, true or false, then when we clear the target, we just set that to false, and in which case there is no target, and there'll be no nav target showing on the holo display, because there is none. And on the UI we can just put no target on there rather than zeroing out the value. A boolean is cleaner. But as for this, we're just going to have to loop it twice, annoyingly. So actually, if we do it there, so the logic behind this is that the first thing we're going to do is loop through our menu items, work out how many we're including from this, and then we will set the number of segments accordingly. So that basically solves that problem. And then we will loop through and actually add the menu items. And then actually that can, I know we'll leave it as part of the loop. So yeah, so so we should set the number first and then generate the menu, which means that they should now match. Yeah, so they're all lined up now. Just need to do the same for the other menu levels, which is basically that. Just do that to fix that bit. Pop that in there. Replace that with level 1 data instead. Is that the same? No, it's not. Okay. That should be all we need to do. And then the same on this one. So get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. Pop that back over there. Get rid of that, do that. Paste, no. Copy that. Pop it in there. Time we're working with our level 2 data. And then that should fix the alignment issues. Yeah, there we go. Everything is now where it should be. I need to rename that to system rather than location so it fits a little bit better. We're quite tight on text space. Okay, so let's get rid of cancel orders if there are none. Okay, so I guess on construct we need to get a reference to our orders manager. I'm thinking probably do it on initialized actually. I don't think we're using that yet. Yeah, so on initialized. First of all, we will listen for gameplay messages. We're listening for our startup levels loaded with our dummy struct, just to make sure that everything's loaded, and then we will get all actors of class, which we're only doing once, so it's not a problem, which is our task manager. We know it's there because we've checked that the levels are loaded, so we can then promote that to a variable, and that is our task manager reference. So that just happens once at game start, so we don't need to worry about getting all actors of class. So now that we have that though, so I just realized I'm doing that here. I don't need to do it here at all. This is completely the wrong place to be doing it. I need to be doing it on here. Yeah, here. So I need to do it here. Do we have task manager already? We should do. Really? Are we not getting a reference to that anywhere? I guess not. I suppose we haven't had a call to, but no, that's fine. We don't need to do a levels loaded check on this. Let's take it down here. Because this this pawn is not even spawned until well after the levels are loaded and part of the loading sequence. So that shouldn't hurt just to have that there. But now that we have that, we can get our task manager, and then we can get shipwide orders, and then is that greater than 0? Oops, I'll get the length first, that would help, wouldn't it? So quite simply, if the length of shipwide orders is greater than 0, then we can include this as an option. Let's rename that so it fits better. mean, equally, we can potentially remove this option, like if you're not in a star system. Because we get our game state and then cast to game state, and then we get galaxy location generator, and then we get sector location details. So our location type basically is where we are. So if we are in interstellar space, then we don't care about running an exploration of that area because there's nothing there. So actually that's... If we want to be really intelligent about it, so we want to tick all the different types of star systems, including black hole, rogue planet, and that's it. So the ability to explore the current system will only be included if it matches any of those types, and it's not relevant for the rest of them. Could do, Danger Mouse, yeah, it wouldn't hurt, to be honest. Have a good one, CSI, sleep well. It's quite early for you. I normally expect you to disappear around about 11:30, so yeah. Looked at the clock and I was like, hang on a minute. Oh yeah, the clocks changed, didn't they? I forgot all about that. There we go. So we've only got explore current system as an option because there are no orders in the system to cancel. So that's fine. So if we just head out into the black a minute, then the option to explore current system should disappear from the list and just have basically back as the only option once we are beyond the system. No longer in the system, so orders, shipwide orders, there we go, and there's none there now. And the menu has updated accordingly. So if we now go, so actually if I select something like that one, we now have the ability to explore this system, which the crew should dutifully do. Maybe, maybe not. Interesting. Oh, did it? I think, yeah, of course. So as we are passing between subsectors, it's resetting the display, and I think what it's doing is it's actually resetting the command target. So I kind of got to get in there quick. No. No. Okay. Hang on then. Let's stop the ship. Okay, so explore target system is not even coming up. Okay. So that's working. But that now isn't. So the question is it broken from Sol, or is it just broken? So if I just do the usual, target Alpha Centauri, explore, so I've got two options there now, so explore target system, okay, which is not being raised as an order, so it's not, there's no option to cancel it. Alright, what changed? Because that was working earlier. What did we break? So, explore current system, explore command target. So none of that changed. I'm assuming it must be something to do with how we were treating this. Okay. Let's just have a look at what we're doing here. So we're firing an action. It's not the back button. So we're simply firing our radial menu action, which is this. So we're getting our owning pawn for the menu, and we're simply firing back that at the given channel, the channel which is specified here. So bridge commands ship wide, explore command target, so it's not that, so it'll go through straight to the player controller. So it comes through there, it gets turned into a server action. Bridge commands ship wide, which is that one. So bridge commands ship wide. So that comes into this. And then we've got ship wide explore command target, which is definitely this one. So create the ship wide order. Okay, we'll got a reference to that there. Okay, so our task manager, we create a shipwide order, new orders come in, it's not being raised active, so it just gets added to the list. Okay, so I guess the first question is, are we actually raising anything? That will at least tell us if we're getting this far. Yeah, I've got a bunch of whiskey behind me, Delta. I might need to break it out at this point. Out the way, dude. Right. Target the system. Raise the orders. So explore target system. Okay, so shipwide orders. Explore. Oh, there's a back button work. Orders, shipwide, back, back, orders, back, orders, shipwide, back. Yeah, so they're all working. Explore target system. Okay, so that tells us that we're not getting this far. So I guess the first step in the chain is this. So let's make sure that we're actually registering this bit. In fact, let's stick that in there so we can see exactly what it is we're passing through as an action ID, if anything. This might be a result of us messing with the ordering of the menu. Okay, yeah, so that is what's happening, because it's coming up with belay orders. So let's have a look. Right, okay. So yeah, so this is not taking into account the fact that we have changed the structure of the menu dynamically, because the selected index is basically changing. So I'm going to have to dig into that, because there's some math involved, because it works out like degrees around a circle depending on the number of segments. Let's get rid of that because that's not needed. I mean, it shouldn't matter. Because we're setting up the children there, and that's an exact number of segments there. So we're doing that first. So this shouldn't complete until this does, but just to remove any doubt, let's just do that just in case. Just to make sure that we've definitely set that before that. Hey Celtic, all good. Thanks for asking. I wonder if oops. I wonder if it depends where I'm clicking it. Okay, so that, yeah, it's like one index behind where it should be. Okay, but actually while we're doing this, just to prove this is working, yeah, so we've now got cancel orders, so that should cancel this. So let's make sure that it does. Actually, no, I'm going to keep that for a minute because that's useful to know what it's doing. So they're fine, and that's sending play orders to there. Okay, and that's going straight to the orders manager. Right, yeah, so that's just making it pending. So what we'll do is we'll get rid of all of that. We'll get our active shipwide order. We only want our order ID from there. And then we will get our shipwide orders. So if that equals that, quite simply, then we shall grab that and then remove index, that one, and then early out from the loop because we don't need to continue. Not that there's going to be many in the loop, but still, may as well. So that's always going to cancel whatever the current active orders are. Let's just give that a quick test. Okay, so we're off on our way. Right, so if we now go cancel current orders, yeah, there we go, orders are gone. Now what it won't have done is it won't have gotten rid of the current orders that are at the bridge stations. So these guys are still going to continue doing the last thing they were told to do. So I think we need a parent orders reference so that we can remove any orders which specifically relate to the shipwide order that we just cancelled, so that we can link them together. Because what we don't want to do is completely clear their queue. So if they've got a queue of a whole bunch of stuff that they're doing, we don't want to just nuke the whole thing. We only want to remove the ones that are relevant to the current orders. And then we obviously want them to cease their activity from here on an individual basis, but at the same time, when it comes to the ship-wide order, we need to handle that from a different path. So, that having been said, if we grab that, no, I suppose I'm going to have to do this specifically on each of these ones, so can't remember I specified them all now. I need to unify the folders where I've been making this stuff, because otherwise it gets a little bit confusing. Okay, yeah, it is those ones. Right, so we've got our order ID on there. We're going to need a parent ID. So we'll use that for linking these individual orders to an overall parent task. We can also leave that being 0 as a way of working out other things if need be. It's a useful way of separating out linked orders from individual orders. So eventually I need to make a struct for all of the different bridge stations, but obviously we only need the 2 right now because those are the only 2 that have working NPCs. So those are the only 2 we need to care about. Yeah, so you will eventually have all of these on a UI. So when it comes to the ship-wide orders, I'm going to have them on here. So I'll have a tabbed interface. So you'll have controls for the holo display, but you'll also have controls for ship-wide orders, so that you can have like little up and down arrows to prioritize certain orders above others. So if you've got orders to explore a star system, and then the ship needs refueling, you can kind of bump the refueling task up the list so that the crew work on that first before moving on to carry on explore the system. So that will be done on here. Not as easy for the individual bridge stations, but I'm sure we can come up with some UI somewhere for managing those. But generally speaking, the tasks that appear on each station are there and gone, usually within minutes. So they shouldn't have a huge queue, unless, like with the helm, you're giving it a long list of places to visit one after another. The main one is the shipwide orders. Those are the big things, and those ones definitely need managing from here. That's it, yeah. Break out the hamster wheels. Okay, so normally when we create a task, we don't care about the parents, but now we do. So so manage shipwide orders. That gives us our various objectives. So this is our fleshed out one at the moment. So when we actually go and create orders, we need to take that parent ID from our shipwide ID. So we'll just plumb that in there. So that now links those together. So in any instance where we are raising orders, we need to make sure that we populate that parent ID. Most of the time we've got our active order available to us anyway, so shouldn't be too much of a bother. Okay, that's those linked together. So now that we've done that, what we can do is when we cancel our shipwide orders, not only do we want to remove the order itself, but we also need to go through and clear out all these subtasks that relate to that. So so yeah, before we kind of want to do this all at once, really. The reason I'm pausing here is because if we clear out all the orders that we don't need, then it's going to recreate them probably before this has had a chance to cancel the shipwide order. But if we cancel the shipwide order first, then this is no longer going to be a valid reference. So I guess what we need to do first is we need to capture that ID. Then we can safely nuke that. So if we promote that to a variable a minute, I should pop this in a function really, then we can make a local variable. But if we just make a temp parent ID, just to give us something to work with, and then we don't need that anymore, we can just pop that in there. So that takes care of removing the shipwide order, and then we can take our oh, I'm losing my voice, and we can take our bridge orders, and basically for all of these, and I guess we can just use a sequence for that. It's a bit cumbersome, but it's the only way we can get to the data. We can do a for each on that. And then we can check our parent ID against our temp parent ID. And if they are matching, then we can remove an index from there, which is again going to be a little bit clunky and awkward, but we can just remove the index like so. In the interests of keeping this neat, I'll do that. Yeah, and then basically we just need to do the same thing for each of those. So pop that in there, pop that in there. That's a different struct, so we'll just do that. Right, so that would handle clearing out all of the indexes. Am I going to make it another 40 minutes? We will see. Right, let's give that a whirl and see. Okay, so we've got an order there for our shipwide orders. We've also got some orders there to navigate to that location. So if we now go ahead and cancel that orders, that one will disappear, and that one should also disappear. Except, so it will have disappeared, but the UI doesn't know that it's disappeared because we haven't told it specifically. So what we do when we create orders, I guess we do that from here then, don't we? So where are we? Create orders, blah 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 blah. We just send out a broadcast message just to let all the UIs and things know that we have updated the list of orders. So we just need to make sure we just broadcast that out on that channel so that the various UIs know to do a refresh. And obviously this one's going to be sensors. Okay, so we remove the index and then we broadcast out the fact there's been an update, and that will update the UI. I guess one of the other questions that we need to answer is, what should the NPC do? Because right now, so we've got a shipwide order there, and we've got a specific helm order here to go to that location. Now, when we cancel our orders, that has now disappeared, but he's still happily navigating to the target location, because that was the last thing he was told to do. So I guess the question is, if there are no current orders for the NPC, then should they stop the ship? In fact, I put that to you guys. Do you think the NPC should stop the ship if they have no current orders? Hey, thank you. Yeah, so I guess we should be doing most of what you can do in Bridge Crew. It's not quite as mission driven as Bridge Crew is, although once we do our single player campaigns, obviously we'll have missions and things. But yeah, in terms of like bridge gameplay, it should be pretty much the same kind of thing, only you've got the whole ship as well as just the bridge, and you can walk about. Yeah, I think generally speaking, like the pilot is actively flying the ship somewhere, if they have an order to do so. So I'd be inclined to have them stop the ship if there are no active orders to go anywhere. Like if you're going somewhere, then you should have orders already to go there. Let's just give that a try a minute and see whether or not they do, because what we can do here is like if there are no helm tasks, then we can actually disable the autopilot if it's on, and also disable the FTL if it's on. Yeah, so we can borrow that and do the opposite, and also borrow that and do the opposite. It's a shame that Bridge Crew got pulled. I mean, I don't actually know the story behind it, why. I don't know whether it was a licensing issue or just a cost issue. I don't know. I don't know why they stopped development. I guess from our perspective, it's kind of like bittersweet in a way, because it was ultimately Bridge Crew that got Stage 9 shut down, because Bridge Crew had an exclusive license for VR. So of course CBS had to uphold the exclusivity of the license for VR games in a Star Trek universe. So because Stage 9 had VR, it was in breach of the exclusivity agreement that they had with Bridge Crew. Now where I think that went terribly wrong is that they then wouldn't have a discussion with us about it, about just taking out VR, and that solves the problem. But I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of the talks behind closed doors and everything else that went on. But yeah. So ultimately, if it weren't for Bridge Crew, Stage 9 wouldn't have been shut down, at least when it was shut down. So yeah, bittersweet. Yeah, I'd say cancel orders isn't necessarily the same as all stop, but I think we'll treat it as such for now. Although I can see that potentially being annoying. Stage 9 was a full 3D simulation of the Enterprise D. So we were building, obviously, Stage 9 was named after the set they built and filmed it on. But we were building a 3D recreation of the Enterprise D that you could walk around and basically use it like an interactive museum. So, there were some gameplay elements there, but ultimately it was an experience, like a free experience for players. Which was well loved, and it was such a shame when CBS shut it down. I wasn't there from the beginning. I worked on Stage 9 in its kind of its twilight years, but yeah, it was a shame to see it go. Although, if it weren't for CBS doing that, I wouldn't be making this, so I guess we can thank them for that. Okay, that should take care of that. I am wondering whether I've even set these up as actions, so I'll just quickly check that. One day, Doubter, one day. Yeah, I think Claire's right. I think Stage 9 did get a bit big. I mean, it got a lot of publicity and it started building traction. And I think, again, with Bridge Crew having like exclusivity in terms of VR, obviously they have to uphold their licensing, and we can't begrudge them that. Of course they had to. It's it's their IP. The contract exists. They can't ignore the fact that exclusivity is being invalidated. But the problem I had with CBS is the fact they wouldn't talk to us about it. They wouldn't just have a conversation. There was no, like, maybe you could do this, because ultimately we weren't making money from it. We were giving it away completely free to the fans. It was just a non-profit and, in my opinion, fair use project. that was just a celebration of the ship by fans. So, to shut that down, I think was a step too far. They should have spoke to us about it, set some guardrails, and say, right, you can do this. This is fine, but you can't do this. And we would have happily have just stripped out VR and said, okay, if VR is a no-go, we'll just take it out. That'd be fine, and just have a walk around so people can still, explore the ship and experience how cool it was. But no, there was absolutely no willingness to speak to us at all, and that's where I take umbrage with the whole thing. It wasn't the fact they shut us down; it was the fact they wouldn't talk about it. And I can't, I can't question the fact they need to uphold their licensing. Of course they do, but not willing to have a conversation, I think, was just rude, really. And like Claire said, most of the people working on Stage 9 are now working for Otoy on the Roddenberry project. So, in the long run, things have worked out for the best. You've got a group of talented people working directly on Star Trek with the Roddenberry project. And, I wanted to build something like this, which I could never have done with Stage 9, because turning that into a game would definitely have been violating some IP laws. So yeah, in the end of the day, like, all's well that ends well. And like Claire said, Fuzzy Door were amazingly welcoming of us for the Orville. And it was such a breath of fresh air to speak to an IP holder, have them embrace the fans and what the fans wanted to do, and actually be excited by it, as opposed to CBS that were like, no, don't do this, go away. Yeah, the whole Axanar thing was a difficult one, and a lot of creators are not happy with Axanar because they kind of ruined it for everybody else. And I don't know a lot about the Axanar thing, and I'm baffled as to how much they were allowed to do in the end. They're still calling it Star Trek, which I'm surprised they were allowed to do. But yeah, it did kind of ruin fan art and fan creations because of all the lawsuits and everything around it. So that's a shame. Yeah, the Orville's brilliant. Yeah, like I said, if it weren't for CBS and the Stage 9 getting taken down and then having to go and move on to the Orville, we never would have worked with Seth MacFarlane and Fuzzy Door. I mean, that was an amazing experience. Just speaking to those people and being able to create something in their universe was an amazing experience. And we never would have got to do that if it weren't for CBS shutting down Stage 9. And now look at what I'm doing. I'm building a whole game, which again, I probably never would have even started if it weren't for all of that happening. So in the end, it all worked out well. What was I doing? Oh yeah, I was checking that, wasn't I? Yeah, sorry, Claire. didn't think I'd created the actual commands for that, so need to make sure that we set these up too. Guess it's just the same button. It goes a lot deeper than that, though. It's not about whether or not you're earning money from it. It's about your use of someone else's IP. And, you know, there are fair use arguments to be made for things, but fair use only takes you so far. Like making an entire game with gameplay and story and things using someone else's IP, even if you're doing it for free and giving it away for free, it's still like a massive IP violation, because you are placing something on the market which could take away from an actual product they were making. So, you know, there's definitely, you know, issues that you can cause from that, which is why, you know, fair use is a difficult thing to quantify, because it's about what is the market impact of the thing you're doing using someone else's name and product, which is why we are very, very specifically not using anything from any IP in our game, because we don't want those problems. Like I said before, we're not trying to make Star Trek, and there is nothing in this game even remotely like Star Trek. None of the technology, none of the plot, none of the characters, none of it is related to Star Trek. And we will be keeping it that way. Well, it's one of the reasons that I wanted to make my own IP and work on our own universe, is because we don't have any overhead or any oversight. So we have full creative control, and we don't have any guardrails that we have to stay in. Like one of the examples working with the Orville was that we weren't allowed to include any plots or progress any stories or do anything that would affect canon in any way. So as much as we were allowed to make like a digital recreation of the ship and even include the characters just as set pieces, we weren't allowed to implement story or gameplay in that regard, because that's then you're affecting the IP, you're affecting the universe by doing that. So, you know, you've got those guardrails in place, but by having our own IP and making our own product, we don't have any of those problems. We have full creative freedom to do whatever we want. And, you know, that's definitely a lot nicer to have that freedom. I guess another element of that is that we don't want to copy Star Trek. I mean, the more that we explore our own IP and we explore, real science and real engineering and all the challenges that come with that, it highlights how flawed Star Trek is and how it's not hard sci-fi. There's a lot of hand waving that goes on that we don't want to do. We want, again, real science and real engineering, and you don't get that with Star Trek. So we are embracing our own thing. No, that wasn't me, Celtic. Right, so we're at full speed. FTL's on, that's on, that's on. So, right, so if I now go ahead and cancel the orders, there we go. So we've disengaged the autopilot, disengaged the FTL, there are no orders on the system. So the ship should come to a complete stop, and we'll be waiting for our next task. I forgot they came on when it was slowing down. Okay, so the ship is now in a pending state now, waiting for further orders, which is good. So I suppose a good thing to test. So if we tell the helm to go there, okay, and then we set orders to explore. Oh no, of course. Our menu's messed up, so that doesn't help. So of course it didn't cancel that, because that's not linked to a shipwide order, which is good. So that's gonna quite happily fly there. Yeah, let's fix that radial menu then. See if we can work out what's going on with that. Yeah, it could be our PGX you're talking about. I know that they modded Voyager Elite Force hugely. In fact, I think it became a standalone thing in the end. Just wondering whether this was a starting at zero problem. No, there's a very specific thing where you can't copyright an idea. You can only copyright how you are uniquely representing that idea. So, like, you can't copyright a cup, but your particular novel form of a cup you can copyright. So, with something like Star Trek, for example, you can't copyright the idea of humans exploring space, but you can copyright the United Federation of Planets, you can copyright the USS Enterprise, you can copyright the crew and all the names. So you can copyright your artistic expression of that idea. But we don't want any issues, so obviously we're avoiding anything to do with Star Trek at all. So no, we're not going to have comm badges, even if they're a different shape. So yeah, but again, we don't want to. We don't want to copy Star Trek. We want to make our own thing. We've got our own like little AR headset earpiece things and little wrist controls. That's unique to us, and it's good to have something that's unique. Yeah, I mean, you can't copyright like electricity being used to power a light bulb, or something like an Alcubierre drive, because it's based on real world science papers. Even the term warp predates Star Trek. So as much as Star Trek has popularized the term warp in terms of space travel, they didn't invent it. It came from, was it islands in space? There's some old like 1940s, 1950s work of fiction which created the term warp before Star Trek did. And there's quite a few things in Star Trek which aren't actually from Star Trek. They do predate Star Trek as an IP. But it's about the big picture. So if you have a game that looks like Star Trek, uses Star Trek terms like warp, even though they didn't invent the term, if you're using it in that environment, then you could argue that there's substantial similarity between those two things. And substantial similarity is it's a difficult thing to quantify, and it's based on human judgment, which is why we don't even want to go down that road. It's not worth it, ultimately. It's as much as, yes, we love Star Trek and we're Star Trek fans, we don't want to be Star Trek. We don't want our game to be Star Trek. We want our game to be our game. We want it to be our IP, our ideas. And the further we can get away from Star Trek, the better, really, because it makes us more unique and more ourselves. And, I'm confident that we can do that, and we can come up with a good story and a good game all on our own without having to copy Star Trek. I forgot what I was doing again. Oh yeah, I was checking the radio menu, wasn't I? Right, yeah, so that is still there. So why is that still there? Well, true, yeah. I mean, my favourite sci-fi of all time is still Babylon 5. It's not even Star Trek. And I say it every time, but I count Babylon 5 as the best sci-fi story ever written. It's amazeballs. We definitely have Easter eggs in there, like, we need something like LV-426 and xenomorph eggs, and we need Easter eggs. I don't think anyone would have a problem with Easter eggs. Oh, they're bringing Firefly back as an animation. That's suboptimal. Oh yeah, I'll watch it for sure. But then I actually enjoyed Lower Decks. I wasn't expecting to enjoy Lower Decks, but I think having it set in the TNG era helped. Yeah, I'm going to have to dig into this a lot deeper because I'm not quite sure where that direction's coming from. So obviously that is breaking the menu in terms of handling the mouse cursor direction. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bypass that, and we won't worry about culling options for a moment. What I might do is actually grey them out, but let's at the very least for now just fix it breaking, so at least everything's working the way it should. Oh, of course, and by doing that, I then forgot to set that. That is weird though, actually, because if getting the length of the array is working, then is that not the same thing? I'm going to reset it back to how it was originally, and then I'm going to try something. Thank you, Melissa. Much appreciated. So that should get us back to working properly again. Let's double check. So orders, shipwide orders, yeah, it's all there. Yeah, that's working. That's all working. And that's working. Okay, good. So what I wanted to try, I think we'll do this for the level 1 menu specifically. Okay, so we know that works. So if we specifically build that before we do that, and rather than updating segments, we will let's just make it an actual variable first. just going to add 1 rather than incrementing, just so that we're absolutely sure that it's doing the right thing. So if include is true, then I'll increment that, and at the end, oops, get rid of that. So that value should be the same value that we would have come up with that, only without the skipped ones being involved. So then that should make us free to build that, having already specified that, which is what we would do anyway. Let's just give that a quick check. Okay, so we've got 3 things. That's the alert condition, that's the shipwide orders. Right, so that one's working then. Great. It must be because I was using a local int, I think. Something about that it was not liking. Alright, so if we chuck that over there, move that out the way, grab that, and we can borrow that again. That way. I don't think you technically need to reset it because that's a reference, but I'll like over-egg the pudding a bit, I guess. Oops. Needed that. Right, okay, so that's just our things back. Okay, so give ourselves a target. So can we now explore targets? No, we can't. See, that's weird. Okay, I'm going to have to dig deeper into that because for some reason grabbing that number via looping the array first is it's breaking something that is not immediately obvious to me. So I'll have a look. If technically it should work, and it did for this. I wonder if it. I wonder. Could it be that simple? It would be weird if that was the problem. No, that wasn't the problem. Okay, don't know. I'll have to dig into it. But that is us at time anyway. So I will go and scratch my head over that off stream. and I wish you all adieu. What day is it? It's Wednesday, isn't it? Yes. So we'll be back on Friday for likely more of the same. I think I'm at dev build levels of working now. So let's see whether a package works. I'm guessing it probably won't, but we'll see. I've changed so much, especially with all the different structs and things, that I've probably got some null pointers flying about the place. So we'll see. But if this packages, then I shall put out a build. But we shall see. Thank you, Firstus. Yeah, it's now that I'm like not ill, my head's back in the game, which is nice. So yeah, I'll keep plugging away at it, and hopefully we'll get this public demo done and dusted over the next couple of weeks. We still need to do our bug fixing pass, but we'll just see how many bugs this new system raises. And I'm not going to hold my breath because I imagine it's probably hundreds, but we'll see. Right, have a good one, everyone, and I shall see you on Friday. Bye for now.